Hi, and welcome to Berry Aftercare, where the topic this week is expectations and how they can lead to trouble. I'm Dr. Connie Stapleton, licensed psychologist. I've worked in the bariatric field for about 18 years. And so let's get started with this week because expectations can cause us all kinds of problems. Tonight, we're going to be talking about what expectations are and give some examples, common ones, related to the weight loss journey, and what can make an expectation unrealistic. Talk about that. Let's talk about how to overcome setting unrealistic expectations because, as you are aware, setting unrealistic expectations just sets us up for failure. We've been talking about self-sabotage, and setting unrealistic expectations is an example of self-sabotage. So what are expectations? Well, they're a strong belief that something will happen or this is going to be the case in the future. And common examples of expectations related to the weight loss journey, which we're going to explore as being either realistic or maybe they're unrealistic in just a bit, include I will lose weight after having bariatric surgery. Okay. Another common expectation is I will keep my weight off after I have bariatric surgery. A third common expectation, my loved ones will support me after surgery. They'll help me as I work toward developing the healthy lifestyle that I am seeking. And hey, you may even expect that they'll join you in that pursuit. I love this one. I will be happy when I lose weight. Realistic or unrealistic? Dun, dun, dun. Just giving you a little clue there. And another example of an expectation when one goes into the weight loss process is people will finally accept me and stop giving me grief because of my weight. So those are things I hear from patients all the time. And in the past 18 years, I've heard these repeatedly. So we're going to talk about whether these are setups for disappointment, whether these are setups for sabotage, or whether these are realistic expectations. So what is it exactly that makes an expectation realistic or unrealistic? Well, let's begin by accepting the fact that every one of us has and does set some unrealistic expectations in our lives, whether it's related to relationships or our children or our jobs or our education, whatever it is. And the thing is, a lot of times it takes hindsight. It's after something's been done or not done that we go, you know what? Maybe that wasn't such a realistic expectation to begin with. So sometimes it's hindsight when we recognize that maybe things didn't go exactly as we had hoped or as we had planned. But here's the thing, unrealistic expectations can result in giving up. That's not what we want. We don't want to give up on the goals altogether. But if we have unrealistic expectations, sometimes that's what happens. Unrealistic expectations, I'm laughing at myself here, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit, can cause problems in relationships. Okay, I'll tell you now. I really believed, tragically, when I got married at the age of 23, that it was my husband's job to make me happy. Oh my goodness, what a setup for me to be way disappointed in him, right? Because that's not his job, but I really thought it was. And what a setup for a relationship because being married or expecting someone else to bring me happiness is just plain unrealistic. There's no way around that one. All right, so that's one of the things I did, which was an unrealistic expectation that resulted in all kinds of problems. Unrealistic expectations can also damage ourself and our sense of self. And we know from the past couple of podcast episodes that a lot of us already suffer from thinking we are lacking in some way. We have low self esteem, we have low self worth, we batter ourselves with our self talk. So we don't need to do anything to worsen that situation. According to a woman named Selena Snow, she's a PhD clinical psychologist who lives in Rockland, Maryland, or at least she did at the time she wrote this. She says that unrealistic expectations are potentially damaging. Yes, we know, because they set us and others up for failure. Ooh, I like that she included other people, and we'll talk about that. When we or someone else naturally falls short, what happens is, she says, we draw false conclusions. We experience difficult feelings and can behave in unhelpful ways. So let me use myself as an example again. When I had the expectation that getting married and this man was supposed to make me happy, what a setup for myself and for my husband and for our relationship. I set us up for major failure because he's going to fall short. First of all, it's not his job to make me happy. Second of all, even if it was, what other human being can make me happy and do it consistently, right? What a setup for that poor man. There was no way he was going to win. There was no way our relationship could win with those kinds of expectations. So false conclusions, it's like if I had kept on with that train of thought and held on to those expectations and not gotten major help to figure out that wasn't going to work and that wasn't fair to him and that was a major setup and faulty thinking, then I would have gone on to blame him like, well, our marriage failed because he just didn't make me happy. And, we all know that was his job. What a loser he is. Oh my goodness. How much awfulness is inherent in that unhealthy, very unhealthy expectations of another human being for my happiness, which, in case you're like, I don't get it, what's the problem? Well, if you have that thinking, then you need to come see me individually. Like I needed to go get some serious individual therapy because nobody else can make us happy. That's my job. Now, they can add to the experience, of course, but the expectation cannot be that that's their job. So I experienced many difficult emotions and feelings because I was crushed when I learned A, he wasn't making me happy, B, it wasn't his job to make me happy, and C, I was the one responsible for setting up that whole catastrophe and series of failures. All right. It was very unhelpful. I behaved in unhelpful ways. you know, I thought he was this big loser. I thought my life is miserable and it's his fault. Oh my gosh. What disastrous thinking. What a setup that I did to him, to us, to our relationships. Not good. So unrealistic is too much on what a person wants or what we hope for rather than what's actually possible. So back to the marriage example, right? What was wanted was I wanted to be happy, but I wanted him to make me happy. What I hoped for was that being married would finally bring me happiness that had eluded me my entire life. And the hope was that this man, this knight in shining armor that I had set up on a pedestal, was the one who was going to bring me what I longed for and hoped for and so desperately wanted. And that's not possible. So unrealistic goals focus on things that we want or we hope, but they're not really possible. So in other words, you set unrealistic expectations or unrealistic goals when you focus on those things you dream about. you hope for, you want, rather than what you can actually realistically have. So when you think about, and you know you've done this, right? When you think about losing weight and you imagine, you hope for, you want, you desire, you covet the body of a Victoria's Secret model or a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, friends, that's not likely gonna happen. And so if that's what you're thinking about and hoping for and dreaming of and just think that's really a possibility, you're only going to be let down because that is an unrealistic hope, an unrealistic wish. It's magical thinking. So that's what an unrealistic goal is. So when we talk about weight loss, a lot of people come into whether it's medically supervised weight loss, a fad diet, surgical weight loss, a lot of people come in with unrealistic weight loss goals. And some of these can be related to weight loss or any other thing. One of them being, I think I need to be perfect. I've talked to so many people, both in my work in the field of alcohol and drug addiction, and also in the field of weight loss. So many people have this thought that I need to be perfect. I need to do the diet perfectly. I need to do the exercise perfectly. I need to do the guided dooms perfectly. I must be perfect. Well, hello, setup. Hello, unrealistic expectation, because it's not feasible. It's not possible. It's not even within the realm of possibility for human beings on this planet to be perfect. So it's an absolute setup for failure. It's an absolute setup for sabotage, which we talked about in a previous podcast. So if you want to torment yourself, go ahead, be my guest, but I don't advise it because we torment ourselves in so many ways anyway. But if you add to the list, I must be perfect, and you hold on to this absurd notion, then you need to run, not walk, sprint to a therapist because anybody in your orbit is going to be miserable if you hold on to this expectation because you're only going to be miserable thinking, I need to be perfect, I need to be perfect. And every single day you will fall short of that and you will be gloomy and grumpy and mean. Oh, how would I know this? Because I've been there. Yeah, perfectionism runs deep with a lot of us who have been in the world of addiction or struggling with weight. We think we need to be perfect, but trust me, ain't none of us perfect, and ain't no one ever gonna be perfect, much like my grammar. So far from perfect. Here's another common unrealistic expectation. Everybody must like me. About this, I have only one word. Bah ha 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 ha. Come on, friends. We really need to get real here. So, to begin with, do you like everybody you meet? Doubtful. So, if the person or people you don't particularly like have the expectation that everybody needs to like, well, needs to like them, well, you just shattered their hopes. I'll restate my imperfect grammar. Ain't none of us gonna be liked by everybody. Let it go. It's a sabotage setup for failure. Here's one that may land painfully close for some of you. When I lose weight, I'll be happy. Now, we will go into more depth about this particular goal in a bit, but as stated, for those of you who have lost a significant amount of weight in the past and have pinned your hopes of being happy when that happened, I'm sure you realized in short order that a specific weight on the scale, like a wedding ring on your finger, a diploma that hangs on your wall, and probably not even winning the Nobel Peace Prize, which I've never done personally, but hey, none of these things ensures happiness. Happiness is a huge, nondescript word. Much more on that to follow. But let me repeat. Unrealistic goals are those that focus too much on what we want, too much on what we hope for or dream about, rather than on what's actually possible. So, unrealistic expectations make the assumption that we've got a whole lot of control that we don't often have. Therefore, because we don't have control over a lot of these things, we're going to feel disappointed time after time after time that our expectation hasn't been met. And we often make the mistake that somehow we have the ability to control how other people are going to play into that. Remember, I thought my husband was supposed to make me happy. I thought somehow I could control his behavior, how he was going to behave toward me, that his life goal was to make me happy. Oh, dear God. You know, talk about self-centered. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. We make a lot of assumptions about and for other people when we have unrealistic expectations and unrealistic goals. Now, not only do we assume we have control over other people, we make the assumptions when we set unrealistic goals or expectations that we have a lot of control over ourselves, not just other people, although we include that in our fictitious fantasy here. But we assume we have control over ourselves, other people, circumstances. The bottom line here, my friends, is that we have very little control over most things in life. And I'll tell you, when I went through treatment a long time ago, it took me weeks of going through an assignment night after night after night. And the assignment was coming in and having a list ready every single day and reporting to the group. I attempted to control person, place, or thing by my whatever it happened to be. So, for example, I attempted to control my husband by my complimenting him on whatever it was. Why is that an attempt to control him? Because my control was meant as a manipulation. If I compliment him, then maybe he'll compliment me in return, or maybe he'll go to the store for me. It wasn't a sincere compliment. I had an expectation attached to it. That's what made it a control thing. I attempted to control my mother by dropping a hint about my favorite dessert. So I'm telling my mother what I want, even though she knows my goal is to lose weight, in the hopes that she will bring it to me. So my dropping that hint was an attempt at a control. I'm going to do a whole podcast on this because it's really difficult for us to understand how we try to control other people, other places, other things. But here's the reality in life. We don't have control over what other people think. We don't have control over what other people do. We don't have control over how other people feel. We don't have control over the weather. We don't have control over the scale. We don't have control over the grocery store and what they put at the check. We have control to some degree over our thoughts, and we have control over our own behavior. And that is it. Our thoughts and our own behavior. And do we really have control over our thoughts? Well, maybe you're driving along in the car, drive, and all of a sudden a thought pops into your mind like, I'm really mad at my sister because she, whatever. Now, are you in control over the fact that that popped into your head? No, you're not. You are in control, however, once you have that thought about what you choose to do with it. So maybe you have this thought, and thoughts are related to feelings, right? You're mad at your sister and you start thinking about how she ignored your call and didn't text you back, and you make these assumptions in your mind that she's just doing a power play, and you come up with this whole imaginary script in your mind about her. So what your choices are now is you can go with that thought and make it worse and deeper and get angrier with her. And you could shoot her a nasty text. You could call and leave her an ugly email or voicemail. Or you can say, what am I doing? I'm making up this whole fantasy that may have absolutely no base in reality. So you have a thought, not responsible for the fact that you have a thought, but you can choose how you want to behave in response to that thought. You do have choices. So can you control that you had a thought? Not necessarily, but you can control your behavior, which is what you do in response to that thought. And I hate to tell you, you do have control over your behaviors, even though I understand very well that sometimes it feels like you don't. Sometimes it feels like you can't stop yourself from eating something. Sometimes it feels like you can't stop your mouth from opening and saying something. Sometimes it feels like you can't control your behavior. For the most part, we can control our behavior. We have to learn to make a pause between whatever got us angry or upset or bored or lonely or sad and the choices we make. Different podcast. But the point for this one is we don't have control over other people, and we don't have control over a lot of things about ourselves too. So unrealistic expectations or goals, like the ones I mentioned above, are going to interfere with our ability to pursue what matters to us in life, because we're going to be so hung up on working and why other people aren't making us happy, and why things don't work out like we want, why the scale doesn't go where we want it to, and why the grocery store won't just cooperate and take all that sugary stuff away from the checkout stand. So before surgery, here's something that I hear 99% of the time from people. What people tell me they want before they have surgery is improved health and a better quality of life. Funny how that changes a year or two after surgery, when what I hear is an obsession all of a sudden with a specific number on the damn scale, right? I thought you wanted to be healthy. Oh, I did. I do. I mean, I do. I thought you wanted a better quality of life. Well, I do. Are you healthier? Well, yes, I am. Do you have a better quality of life? Well, yes, I do. But I want to weigh that number on the scale. Mm, 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 mm. Focusing on the number will, not might, will prevent you from enjoying a lot of other things in your life, to include that newfound health and that quality of life. It's like wearing blinders. It's like wearing blinders. You miss what's going on outside of this obsession with the damn scale. Ugh, we're going to talk more about that because you can see it gets me riled up. Let's go to the most common, or some of the most common, unrealistic expectations throughout the weight loss experience. And we can talk about whether they're realistic or unrealistic. And if they're unrealistic, how can we revise them, tweak them, so that they can be a healthy, realistic goal, realistic expectation? All right, let's start with some of those ones I listed at the beginning. I will lose weight after having bariatric surgery. Well, that sounds realistic based on science and what the results of bariatric decades. So I will lose weight after having bariatric surgery. Very reasonable based on evidence. Now, let's pretend we stated that differently. I will get to X number of pounds after having bariatric surgery. Then I'm going to classify this as being a very unrealistic goal, a very unrealistic expectation, one that is going to set you up for misery. Okay? Which is the reason I hate goal weights. If you have a goal weight, let go of it, because you do not have control over where your body is going to settle. The surgeon has no way of knowing exactly where your body's going to settle on the scale. And it's one of the biggest setups for failure that I've seen in the 18 years that I've worked in this field. And yet, I can have this conversation with somebody, and literally 5 minutes later, they are back to the obsession. And they're missing the fact that they're off 15 medications. And they're missing the fact that they are now hiking and biking and rollerblading and sitting in the airplane without an extender, and they're washing their own behind, and they are tying their own shoes, and they are living life so much more fully and so much more easily. Trust me, unless you are one of a very few people who ever meets some arbitrary, yes, arbitrary goal weight, and even if you do, that number is going to change from day to day. A specific goal weight is self-sabotage at its finest. A specific goal weight is a setup for failure, disappointment, obsession. A specific goal weight is an unrealistic goal, is an unrealistic expectation. But hey, don't take my word for it. Talk to others. Try it out for yourself. But only if you want to stay in a perpetual state of self-discontent. And speaking of discontent, if you'd like a double whammy of disappointment, letdown, and self-sabotage, set a specific goal weight, yep, and tell yourself you'll only be happy when you reach it. Boom, mic drop. I want you to know that took a lot out of me. But listen, here's the reality. If everybody is 5'4" and they have weight loss surgery, some may have started at 500 pounds, some at 280, some at anywhere, right? And everybody has weight loss surgery, and the doctor says everybody at 5'4" tall woman should weigh 130 to 150 pounds. Oh my. And we all go to the island. I've used this description before, but it helps make sense of this nonsense. So all the women who have weight loss surgery in a year go to the island. And for that year, they all eat the same food, same amount, same time of day, all exercise the same amount, same kind. When we come home from the island in a year, is everybody going to weigh 130 to 150? No, they are not. Why? Because of those very things you use to defend your weight. Biology, medications, illnesses, things that you don't have control over, and they are true. They remain true after you have your surgery, and they are out of your control. So get rid of a dang goal weight. Ugh. All right, another unrealistic goal that I hear a lot. I will keep my weight off after having bariatric surgery. Everybody goes into the process wanting that, hoping that, believing that. Is it realistic or unrealistic? Let's see how it's stated. I will keep my weight off after having bariatric surgery. As it's stated, I'm going to say it's you can make it more realistic by adding a few words. I will keep the majority of my weight off after surgery if I do the work it takes to maintain a healthy weight and do so on a continuous basis. Chances are you're going to keep off most of the weight you lose after surgery if you do what's required. So you can change it from being unrealistic to being realistic using a few extra words. Here's an unrealistic statement. I will keep my weight off and stay at my goal weight for the rest of my life. Friends, you don't have that much control. There are things like, aging, menopause, illnesses, medications, things that are going to influence your weight. And so you don't have the control you hope you do. And don't mistake a dream, a wish, a desire for a realistic expectation or a realistic goal. That's fantasy, not reality. All right, here's another one that we do wish for and hope for and desire. My loved ones will support me after surgery in developing a healthy lifestyle. Now, that would be a nice thing, without a doubt. But like the last one, it depends how we state this. If we're willing to keep open communication about what support means to my family member and to me, and if they want to make some changes, and if I accept and follow through on my part, and if we encourage each other, there's a lot of ifs here. So, stated just as it is, my loved ones will support me after surgery and developing a healthy lifestyle. That's kind of unrealistic because I don't know if I'm talking about their lifestyle, my lifestyle, what my definition of support is, what their idea of support is. So, we gotta tweak that. We've got to have healthy communication. And by the way, do you know what healthy communication looks like? Do you know assertive from passive aggressive or passive or aggressive? The podcast has episodes on all of that. Go back and listen. How about this one? I'll be happy when I lose weight. Maybe, but only if you're happy before you lose weight, or only if you're happy on the days you've gained a few pounds, or only if you're happy on days you've lost a few pounds. Because a number on the scale no more means you're going to be happy than my expectation that getting married to this man and his job was to make me happy. That is completely unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic to think that, whoosh, you're going to be happy when you lose weight. Weight loss does not equate to happiness, and that's a big old bummer for a lot of people. Once they do lose weight and they realize they're still unhappy about their marriage, or they're still unhappy about the situation with their parents. Excuse me. All right. The last one we talked about at the beginning. People will finally accept me and stop giving me grief because of my weight after I lose weight. What was that one word I used above when we were talking about everybody needs to like me? Oh, yes. It was bah, ha, 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 ha. Not realistic, right? People may accept you. People may not accept you. People who accepted you before may not accept you after you lose weight. People who didn't accept you earlier may now accept you. It is not up to you whether people accept you or not. How are you doing with accepting yourself is what's really at issue here. All right. The first step to getting rid of unrealistic expectations is to spot them. And my friends, we have too many blind spots. We don't recognize our unrealistic expectations, and we don't want to hear from other people either. Trust me, I know, because I do 5 to 6 pre-surgical evaluations every day, and people tell me when I lose weight, I'll be happy. When I lose weight, I'll be accepted. They tell me these things, and then I'm the bearer of bad news. It's like, well, maybe, and that would be nice, but let's look at this realistically. Because what matters most is how you accept you. What matters most, if you find happiness, that has nothing to do with the scale. What matters most is that you quit talking to yourself negatively, how other people think about you. So we have to have awareness. So run your goals past your support people, run your goals past your therapist, your bariatric coach, whoever it is, and say, is this realistic or does this sound a little bit out of line? So the 4 ACEs: awareness, acceptance that you don't have control over other people's thoughts, their feelings, or their behaviors. They may like you, they may accept you, they may support you, they may not support you. Who knows? But like you, they may have different emotions after you have surgery that maybe they didn't expect to have. You know, what what they may have agreed to before surgery, they may be reconsidering now. Talked to a woman tonight, and she and her spouse are going through this reorganization of goals and expectations because neither person, the person who's had surgery nor the person who's not having the surgery, can predict or know with any certainty how they're going to react afterwards. And so this couple's having difficulty, but they're talking about it because it's like, well, I thought this was going to be like it. This is how I thought it was going to be. And the other person's like, but this is how I thought it was going to be. This is how I thought you would support me. And they're like, wait a minute, where'd you get that idea? Right? So you've got acceptance that things are likely going to change and that you may be expecting them to read your mind, or they may be expecting you to read your mind, and there may not be clear communication going on or expectation, and nobody is bound to do something because you want them to. Steve, your job is to make me happy. What? That's too much for any one person, right? Like, I'm not buying into that. I had to have the therapist explain to me that that was not his job. So everybody has to communicate. We have to learn to communicate. We need to learn to listen. You've got to talk so they hear you, and you have to listen to them when they talk. Be specific, be direct. Do you feel this way? Don't you feel this way? How are you feeling? How am I feeling? All right, so we've got awareness, we've got acceptance. How's your attitude? Are you going to be resentful if the people don't behave the way you want them to? Are you going to be resentful if they say, you know what, I thought it was going to be like this, but I'm not signing up for that? Are you going to accept that they change like you change? Are you going to accept that you don't get to call the shots for them? You have to walk with me. No, they don't. You have to keep such and such out of the house. Well, it would be helpful and respectful, but they don't have to, right? So what's your attitude about that going to be? And where are you at in terms of accountability? You're responsible for letting people know what you want from them, but they're not responsible to do it just because you want them to, right? You're responsible for letting people know if they've hurt you, or if you're sad, or if you're disappointed. And you're responsible for doing that in a kind and appropriate manner. You are responsible for checking in with others, you know, to see if they think your expectations of them are reasonable. Or maybe you're setting them up for failure in your own mind. And you're responsible for how you handle maybe disappointment with other people. So maybe they said, yeah, I agreed to go to the gym with you, but what I'm finding is I feel very anxious at the gym, and so I'm not willing to do that anymore. Well, you're responsible for how you react and respond to that. So commit awareness, acceptance, attitude, and accountability, the 4 A's and 4 Aces. The C is committing. Commit to setting realistic expectations so that you're able to enjoy and really celebrate your successes. You're able to see beyond the constraints of your unrealistic expectations and enjoy the fact that you can now park your car far away and walk to the store without being out of breath, to accept and enjoy and get pleasure in the fact that you are now able to go back to playing pickleball. Or maybe that didn't even exist before you lost your weight, but you can do things that you enjoy doing that have nothing to do with the weight on the scale. And then the effort is, for sure, put the effort into learning more about how you sabotage yourself by having unrealistic expectations for yourself and for other people. So don't be like me and be such a control freak. Such a control freak. And I really had no idea how much of a control freak I was and still can be, right? I expect other people sometimes to do things because I want it done that way. And that is so unfair. So unfair. And you probably have heard me say this before, but this literally happened when I was in therapy, when the therapist looked at me and said, gee, Connie, sounds to me like nobody's behaving. And I thought, finally, somebody understood me. But what he was saying to me is, Nobody's living up to your expectations. Nobody's doing what you want, when you want, the way you want it. And that, my friends, is the definition of a control freak. Because I did want everybody to do what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted, blah, blah, blah. So inappropriate, so unrealistic, and such a setup for failure. So, you know, go to therapy, find out if you're a control freak like me. All right. So, put forth the effort to celebrate what you did today, not what you didn't do. Don't beat up on yourself all day long, but maintain realistic expectations today, because today is today. Tomorrow's circumstances are going to be different, events are going to be different, people are going to be different, weather's going to be different. All of these uncontrollable and unforeseen things we don't have to worry about. We need to worry about today and what we're doing today. Celebrate those wins, big wins, small wins. Celebrate the wins. And maybe today, make one of your wins getting rid of a goal weight. Like how I snuck that in there? Also, maybe try using humor. If you recognize that you're being unrealistic and your partner or your family members, your friends realize it too, you could maybe have a code phrase where you go off with your lofty, unrealistic goals. Maybe they say something to you like, yeah, and I'm just going to sprout myself a pair of wings and fly to the moon. And that's code for, listen, you are being way unrealistic. And maybe after you hear that a few times from them or from somebody else, you can shorten it. And all they have to say is moon. And you know that's your cue that they may be unrealistic. Seriously and beat up on yourself. Just ask if your expectations are going to move you closer to or further from your goal. So if you have a specific goal weight, and you can't get to that, that's going to move you away from your goals of being healthier and having a better quality of life, right? If you think that losing weight is going to make other people like you more or be accepted more, that's not going to move you to your real goals of being healthier and having a better quality of life. And be compassionate with yourself. We're all guilty of setting unrealistic goals and expectations. So don't beat yourself up about it. Just learn to recognize when that is what it is and then reword it, tweak it a little bit, ask for help with that. Help your bestie with their unrealistic goals. Be flexible, be willing to learn, be willing to grow, be willing to laugh at yourself. Don't be judgmental or harsh or super critical of yourself. Learn and grow. Learn to have healthier conversations. Learn how to be direct. Learn all of these things in a kind way toward yourself and continue to celebrate. All right, let's talk about some take-home messages. Setting unrealistic expectations is an example of self-sabotage. It's going to prevent you from moving ahead in your journey and enjoying your life. Learn what healthy, realistic expectations look and sound like. Talk with your partners, your close friends, your support groups, your therapist, your bariatric coach. Take the process seriously, but with some humor. Leave room for mistakes. Don't criticize yourself. Get a kick out of yourself and move onward and forward. Last week at a conference, I called a surgeon the wrong name for about 45 minutes. And instead of completely dying and beating myself up for it, yeah, I was embarrassed. Yeah, I apologized, but I had to get over myself. And we made light of it and made jokes out of it. All right. Invitations, besides encouraging yourself, get other people to, but make a list of your expectations. Share them with people. Identify whether they're healthy or unhealthy and tweak them. All right. Make improvements where you can and give yourself credit for when you do set realistic goals. And remember, we are talking about your health. We're talking about your health, which is your responsibility, and it's today. It's every day, but every day is today because we're going to live in the moment. Next week on the podcast for bariatric care, we're going to talk about fear of failure. Huge for a lot of us in many areas of our life, but absolutely for many people when it comes to weight loss. Be sure you tune into bariatric care, the whole program this week, because we put out chair yoga this week. We're going to have 2 cooking demonstrations with Chef Healthy Henry. There's a great interview I'm going to post with Dr. Susan Mitchell, registered dietitian, about dieting after having bariatric surgery. And I want to give a huge shout out to Laura Preston for all the work you're doing to help organize the bariatric care program and get our bariatric care Facebook community up and live and running and active. You can be a part of all of these things and so much more by being a part of the full bariatric care program. Check it out, www.bariaftercare, B-A-R-I, aftercare.com. And thank you so much for spending your time with me. You got lots of choices, and I appreciate you joining me as we all live, learn, and grow together. I'll be with you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.